Hello, today we're looking at the normal histology of the esophagus. We will not only identify the key microscopic structures but also build on a mental framework for how the esophagus changes along its length from upper skeletal muscle region through the mixed middle third and down to the smooth muscle of the distal esophagus. Okay. So the esophagus is a muscular tube, as you can see here in the image, that's about 25 centimeters long, connected to the pharynx and to the stomach. Although it looks simple histologically, because you can see this hollow here, it's important. It's an important functional gradient. So the upper third is under voluntary control, that's the upper third of the esophagus, and the middle third is transitional, and then the lower third is involuntary, meaning it's controlled by the smooth muscles. And what we're looking at now on the slide is the upper third of the esophagus, and we'll just go through the normal histology of this. Okay. So let's look at the mucosa. So the esophagus consists of the mucosa, submucosa, lamina propria, and muscularis mucosa and muscularis externa, which is here. Okay. So we'll zoom into the muscularis mucosa. Into the mucosa. Okay. So the mucosa is lined by stratified squamous epithelium, and just to go through the layers, it's got the maturation from the basal cells, which are a little bit more cuboidal to columnar. Okay. And are very mitotically active. Okay, and then they are attached to the basement membrane just here. You can see the basement membrane, and then there's the intermediate layer, which is here, consists of polyhedral squamous cells with increased cytoplasm, as you can see, compared to this and that there. And then there is intercellular bridges may be visible between the cells, which, if you can remember from the first chapters of your histology textbook, you've got your intercellular junctions. If you can see them there, which I'm trying to highlight just here and there, you can see them. And then there is a superficial epithelial layer. So just to say, the esophagus, the mucosa, is lined by stratified squamous epithelium that's non-keratinized, and below the stratified squamous epithelium you've got a basement membrane, which is there, and below the basement membrane you've got your lamina propria, which is very, very thin. This is the lamina propria. And beneath the lamina propria, you've got your muscularis mucosa. Because remember, this is a transverse section, so they run longitudinally along the esophagus length. So here they are cut in transverse section, and these are smooth muscle cells in the muscularis mucosa. Okay. Then deep to the muscularis mucosa, let me just zoom out of high power, is the submucosa. And in the submucosa, we've got submucosal glands, which I can show you. These are esophageal proper glands here, and you can see here some of them have mucin within them. So these glands help in secreting fluid to lubricate your food as you swallow, or can I say mucus glands to lubricate your fluid as you swallow for smooth transition down to the esophagus. Okay. There's also something to note in this portion is the nerve cells, which help in either secretion of material from these glands, and also they help in contraction. So these are the Meissner's plexus. Let me just show you. You can see here some nerve. It's not the best slide to demonstrate nerve tissue here. So now deep to the submucosa we have the muscularis externa, and actually this is actually a very important part of identifying which portion of the esophagus you are in. So if you remember, the upper third of the esophagus has skeletal muscle, and the lower or middle third is lined by smooth muscle. So how do we know we're in the upper third of the esophagus? We know that by identifying skeletal muscle. So this here is skeletal muscle. And how do we recognize that this is skeletal muscle? So skeletal muscle has parallel eosinophilic fibers with clear striations. As you can see here, you can see the striations. And just look at the small box. Let me just go to a nice field. If you look at the small box, you can actually see the striations there. And the nucleus is more peripherally located, so you can see here. So this is a longitudinal section of the esophageal muscles, but I can show you a transverse section here where you see the nuclei are more peripheral. You can see here nuclei are more situated peripherally here on the peripheral aspect. And then the other thing is skeletal muscle may be multinucleated, so you can see multiple nuclei there. So remember, the esophagus, majority of it is lined by adventitia, and a small portion is lined by serosa. But here you can see this is adventitia here, it's lined by. Okay, so now just a quick recap how to identify this is an esophagus and at which region, which is something of importance to recognize this tissue on the microscope. Is that one, it's lined by stratified squamous epithelium that's non-keratinized, as I'm highlighting. It's got a thin lamina propria, okay, and then deep to lamina propria it's got muscularis mucosa, not muscularis propria, which is this. It's actually muscularis mucosa here. And then deep to muscularis mucosa we've got the submucosa, where it contains submucosal glands, lymphatics, and nerve tissue, or the Meissner's plexus. Okay, and then deep to that we've got your muscularis propria. So in the upper thirds, just a reminder, it's skeletal muscle, and lower than that mostly is smooth muscle. Okay, just a pearl. I'm sure you've heard of Barrett's esophagus. That happens more in the gastroesophageal junction, which we'll cover in the next video. A term called metaplasia and acid reflux, on how this epithelium changes, but we'll talk about that in the next video. Otherwise, I hope you are happy with the content on this video, and please feel free to subscribe and like.